about that competitiveness, that streak in Chris Young, Tom, is that something you remember that was translating for you to be sort of the same competitor you were on the field, the same competitor that allowed you to get to the highest level in baseball? Did you bring that spirit to the front office job?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as a player, you're consumed, unless you're Ken Griffey Jr., of playing well enough to stay in the big leagues. You do your best to be part of a team and to be a team player, and you certainly play hard for your team to win. But the level of wanting to win is not even close as a player to what it is as a general manager. I'm not going to get released if my team doesn't play well, but I'm going to get released if the team doesn't play well, for which I'm the general manager. And so you've got a lot on the line. You've got a lot of other people that are counting on you, and not only the front office and the fans, but your family. And the pressure of winning every day was incredible. And yeah, you're competitive. I can remember, and my kids will probably remember it too, because they bring it up about every time I see them. Times where we were up in the booth and the kids were young, and we've got the game won, and late in the game, something happens. We boot a ball, someone hits a home run, and I slammed the desk in front of me and said something I'm not supposed to say, and I'm embarrassed, and I apologize to the kids. But yeah, you get wrapped up in that. And I did it for 10 or 11 years, and you don't realize it while you're in the middle of it. You think that this is the way I always feel and there's nothing different. But people make comments like, relax. Or Rich Billings, one time, was my roommate for a number of years, said, hey, whatever you're doing, you need to reevaluate, because you're not the same person you were before you took this job. And that kind of hit me. And I never
Mm-hmm.
really felt that way myself until I got fired. And I went to spring training the next year as a broadcaster. And it's like the weight of the world is off your shoulders. You can breathe again. And everybody I bumped into said, man, what's the matter with you? That's the happiest I've ever seen you. So after 10 years of bearing down, and I'm sure, you guys, when you talk to Chris Young, you see the intensity, you see the competitiveness, and unfortunately, that consumes every day of your life while you're a general manager. I could be on vacation with the family, and that's all I'm thinking about in the back of my mind. So I don't know how some of these guys, John Shearholtz and other general managers, Pat Gillick, can do that job for more than 10 years. It's just all consuming. Um, but that's a long-winded way of saying, yeah,
Yeah,
you have to be you have to
yeah,
be very competitive. Otherwise,
sure.
things will pass you by.
We've got a ton of questions
Yeah, let's get
for
to some of
Tom.
them.
So let's
Yeah.
start. Let's just start asking them.
Several
wait,
about
that one's for me.
Yeah, several are about the Nolan Ryan acquisition.
Yeah, there you go.
Was that not in the same offseason that you got Rafi and Julio, that you also got
Yeah,
Nolan at the winter meetings?
that was the same off season,
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
and it was funny that the first there's a lot of rumors on we were going to be active and make some relatively big trades, and so we made a trade and called a press conference. The press conference was the biggest one I'd ever been to, and we got up and announced that we just traded Bobby Meacham for Bob Brower, and everybody goes, "What? We came here to hear that." So um, we got a good laugh out of that. But then came Raphael, and then came Julio. Nolan was kind of the icing on the cake. But the one thing that would have made that offseason go from an A to an A plus, I thought we were just about ready to make a trade for Nick Saski, who was a big right-hand hitter for Cincinnati. We were going to trade Dwayne Henry, our best pitching prospect, for Nick Saski. And right at the end, the Red Sox offered I think it was Todd Benzinger, maybe a player a little bit further along in his career, and he peeled more to the Reds, so that they made that trade. We didn't make that trade. Osaski went on to knock in 100 runs that year, so if we could have added him to our lineup, that would have really been something special. But yeah, Nolan was signed that same offseason. Mm-hmm.
What? Okay. Do you have anything on the Sierra Canseco trade? This guy was a kid at the time. His friend was a big A's fan. He was a big Sierra fan. They traded hats afterward. Was there anything to the Sierra Canseco trade that made it hard to pull off, or what was the emphasis behind it?
In the we all the players we traded in that trade, I probably won't have all of them, but Ruben Sierra was one. I believe Bobby Witt and Jeff
Yep.
Russell were in
Yep.
that
Yeah.
trade as well.
Yep.
So on
That's
paper,
such
you
a
go,
huge
how can you
trade.
trade how can you trade all those guys for Jose Canseco? Well, the difference was all those guys were on the last year of their contract. They could all be free agents. We had tried to sign Ruben. Whatever the going rate was back then, 5 years for 25 million, whatever that number seemed to be, we'd offered that to him, but we didn't think we could sign him. We hadn't been able to sign Bobby Witt or Jeff Russell. So with that in mind, on a team that wasn't going to win anyway, I got talking to Sandy Alderson. Sandy Alderson brought up Canseco. Canseco had, I'm not sure what it was, 2 or 3 more years left on his contract. And so, we discussed it and said amongst ourselves, well, we've got these guys. We like all these guys, but they're not going to be here next year anyway. Let's give it a shot and go for Canseco. The best part about that trade was there's a lot of names in that trade, and not one single person in the media had one little inkling that that was going to happen. When that trade was announced, everywhere there was shock because I think Tom Schiefer knew because he heard some of the conversations that I had with Sandy Alderson. From Sandy's side, I don't know if anyone else knew, and so that made it kind of fun. And if we were getting Canseco of a year or two ahead of that, it probably would have turned out to be a great trade. But we got Canseco. He couldn't play anymore. He could still hit the ball out of the ballpark. He was still a threat at the plate, but he couldn't play the outfield anymore. He couldn't throw. Wasn't the same athlete that he used to be. So it took a little bit of the luster off of the trade, but he could still hit. He went to Toronto and hit. And so
Oh yeah.
he wasn't really what we needed though. A big, strong DH kind of guy. We needed a better athlete that could play in the outfield, and I think that's one of the things that put together the championship years for Doug Melvin and the Rangers. He traded Canseco to the Red Sox for Otis Nixon, I think. And on paper you go,
Yeah.
holy, what a bad trade that is. But Otis Nixon was a good center fielder. He could hit at the top of the lineup. Could do a lot of little things. He could run, and he fit into a team concept way better than Canseco did.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Otis never chased a ball in the outfield and had it bounce off his head as
No.
Jose did that time.
Jose and Deion Sanders are the only two that I can think of.
Oh my gosh.
Unbelievable. Somebody asked, and I know you're good about this, and you're not thin-skinned about it. They've several people have asked any trades that you've did as the GM that you want back.
Well, the one for Sammy Sosa is one that's pretty popular.
Sure.
We used to have when Tom Schiefer and George Bush and Rusty Rose ran the team, there was probably 24 or 25 owners, and we would have meetings 2 or 3 times a year. And it was after that trade, some point in time, like a couple years after that trade, I'd explained that trade the best I could to this group more than one time. And I'm at the end of my spiel, and one of the owners, same guy that asked the question every other time, goes, "Hey, Tom, could you tell us about the Sammy Sosa trade again?" And, I was this close to dropping a what on him, and I just had to bite my tongue and answer the question again. That was a bad trade, but I look back on that trade, and the part of the trade to me that was the worst part of the trade wasn't trading Sammy. Sammy was probably 5'11", 175 or 180 pounds, and he looked like he was going to be a terrific player. we would have said at that time he'd be a frontline defensive right fielder with a great arm, a guy that could steal 30 bases, hit 280 to 290, probably hit 35 doubles, 20 home runs, and knock in 90 runs. He'd probably be kind of like Rusty Greer, kind of, which is a terrific player. But, it's pretty tough to predict that 2 years later, he's going to weigh 240 pounds and look like Samson. That's pretty hard to predict that. So I never looked at that. But the guy that hurt in that trade that was stupid to trade was Wilson Alvarez.
Wilson
was,
Alvarez.
Yeah, yeah.
19 years old, a frontline young starting pitcher. I think it was the next year after that trade. Wilson Alvarez got called up to the White Sox, and the game of the week was the White Sox and the Orioles. And I wasn't really watching it, but I saw that it was on, and I heard Wilson's name, and I go, "Oh boy, I better watch this." He threw it. I don't know. Did he throw a no-hitter?
He did.
He did.
He did.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that was the day. I think he threw
Yeah.
a no-hitter.
He threw a no-hitter.
20
Yeah.
years old. Everybody's talking about Sammy Sosa. The guy that's killing us was Wilson Alvarez. So that one, that trade hurt, but not because of Sammy Sosa.
Right. Yeah.
There's no way that you could see that. Another trade that hurt. We had just acquired. Let me think. No, we had signed as a high school player Rob Nen, and
Yeah.
we traded Rob Nen to the Marlins, I guess, for Chris Carpenter. I might be wrong on that, but anyway, we traded Rob Nen, was a starting pitcher, always hurt, great arm, great prospect. We loved him, but we thought we were in a pennant race. We really weren't, and we needed a setup reliever. And so we traded for Chris Carpenter. Rob went over there. They turned him into a reliever. Went to the Giants. Was all-star closer. Saved 40 games every year.
Yeah.
That really hurt to lose him. And Chris Carpenter came here, and the first thing he said was, "Yeah, I never wanted to leave the Marlins." And he, at the press conference, those words came out of his mouth, and I said, "Oh, we're screwed. We've got no chance of this working out." And it didn't. He didn't want to be here, and just didn't work out. So yeah, those were bad ones. I don't mind talking about them. They happened. They're well chronicled, and I'd like to hide from them, but you can't.